There's a legend that precedes the dawn of our civilization, a vile god so large, so powerful that it consumes entire planets as fuel. Here's your look at the brand new Threezero Transformers Rise of the Beast DLX Optimus Primal. Standing at approximately 11.2 inches tall, the Transformers Rise of the Beast DLX Optimus Primal collectible figure captures the essence of the iconic leader of the Maximals as he appears in the film Transformers Rise of the Beast. DLX Optimus Primal takes the honor of having the most points of articulation in the DLX collectible toy line with approximately 74 points of articulation. He contains various interlinking segments of his arm, leg, and body movements. This dynamic range of poseability allows you to recreate the epic moments and battle scenes from the movie. Slated to ship the third quarter of 2024. Just before we get a closer look at the Transformers Rise of the Beast DLX Optimus Primal, I'd like to thank the folks over at Threezero that provided the sample we could have a look at. When this figure does ship, he's going to be shipping at $249.99. So it's about a $250 figure. For the tape measure, though, it's going to tell us that he stands at about 11.25 inches in height, or the leader of the Maximals stands 28.5 centimeters tall. Speaking of leaders, sliding over the one that leads the Maximals and bringing in the one that leads the Autobots, here's what Optimus Primal looks like with Optimus Prime. Truth be told, I probably should have brought in the Optimus Prime that we did get from the Rise of the Beast, but this is the one that's the next closest thing, as it's sharing somewhat of a similar mold. It happens to be, though, the Transformers Optimus Prime from Transformers Bumblebee. Both primes not only share the burden of leadership, but because they're DLX releases, they share the same type of display stand as well. I think it would also be safe to say, painting a very broad brushstroke across everything, generally all Threezero DLX releases come with this exact type of display stand. It's always usually cast in black plastic. It's always usually this mold. The only thing that is changed from release to release is the font that they print on the front. In this case, because it's Optimus Primal, we got Transformers Rise of the Beast. Of course, you got the Threezero logo there printed on the top. Some assembly is required. You have to take the adjustable neck portion and it snaps in place in two places. The larger piece snaps here. The smaller piece, well, you can see it for yourself. But if you look at the bottom of it, you can see that basically what it is it's a clamp piece that once it fits through, it spreads out. I wouldn't recommend really removing these. I've had to do it a couple of times just because I've stored stuff away, and it usually results in fracturing or leaving stress marks on the clips, just because, again, once they snap in place, they're snapped with the idea in mind that they're going to stay like this. Now, this does have some adjustments where not only can you swing this forward and back, but you can also bring this up and down like an elevator. To swing this forward, as it is right now, it's locked in place. What you'll do is see there's this little switch on the front. With it down like this, it locks. With it up, though, and you bring it up like this, you can swing this forward and back. So you can get it to the desired angle that you want to have it. Then once you get it to place where you want to have it, you just bring this down and it locks it in place. It's a little bit different, though, when you want to adjust the neck, though. The neck does have a very loud ratcheted joint. And once it gets extended, it locks to where it is. There's no real way to drop it until you go to the top. And there's a little impressed button here. Oh, well, you have to impress it. And I'm not just saying by giving it compliments. But you press it in, and once you press it in, it allows to release the lock. And then you just kind of lower it and increase it. And again, you can lock it in any one position. This does swing forward, but it doesn't swing forward in the way that you would imagine. Normally, you would just think that this would swing up and down. But it doesn't. What it does is it has these teeth. And if you guys can see, these teeth prevent this from being able to swing forward because there's actually teeth embedded inside the plastic ring as well. So with this, you actually have to lift it up to the place or point where you want to have it, and then it just locks back in. Once it's back in, it doesn't move at all. So you want to get it to the position that you want. I know for those that have already seen a lot of these DLX releases, this is all territory we've covered before, but for the new time collectors of DLX figures, I certainly hope there would be more. Yeah, this is the way that the adjustable neck works. Now, how this plugs onto the back of Primal's body. Normally, with other releases, what it's always been the case is that there's a rectangular plate that you have to remove from the back of their body, and then that exposes a socket joint that then plugs onto the back of the base. With Primal, though, they were smart enough to conceal that. If you look actually underneath what I guess would be his monkey behind, see if you lift this skirting up, there's the hole right there. And then this just plugs onto the back of the body. With the skirt, the way that they designed it, it does sort of get in the way of things. So you kind of have to lift this up. You want to make sure, of course, you're getting the feet out of the way as well. And then this just plugs in place. I just want to make sure I got the legs out of the way. You know what? Let's just put this down here for a second. I'm going to bring this up a little bit because then I don't have to conflict with the legs. But this just snaps in place, which right away is already a saving worry, because normally what would have been the case is you'd have to remove the plate, and if you always have this guy displayed, you'd have to find a place to put the plate. And a lot of times I usually just put the plate back in the box, but I usually always have to put it into a baggie because it's the last thing I want to lose. Because if by chance down the road you decide you want to have this guy displayed without the display stand, now you have to go and retrieve that plate. With this, they've made it really a lot easier. It is still sort of conflicting because, of course, now you got to deal with getting underneath the skirt, but it's always open and exposed. And the only thing that then hides it and convinces you that it's completely finished is the fact that there's just this monkey plate that goes over top of it. Basically, it's just a skirt. So I like the fact that they included that. It's a smart way not just to have to worry about extra things that could be potentially lost. Make sure as well you don't lose this. This is the instruction manual, of course, that comes included with Optimus Primal. I want to flip through this quickly, and then we'll kind of get down to the details of the figure and his various accessories. First of all, the breakdown of his said accessories. Of course, the display stand we've already looked at does attach two different pieces that come out of the box. You got yourself some swappable hands. You got some interchangeable face parts, cyber blades, metallic chains, and then connecting pieces that are going to go onto the back of the figure's body. On the next page, you have the adjustability and the posability of the figure. But the most important thing, and the thing you always really want to look at, whether you be reviewing the figure or if you're just looking to pick this figure up for yourself, is make sure that you pick up the required batteries. Batteries are generally never included when it comes to the DLX releases. You want to make sure that you have yourself always stocked. Luckily for me, I always tend to pick up a lot of these batteries. These are button cell batteries marked as AG13. You need 2 of them. Luckily, you don't need any more than 2. If it was a Bumblebee release, for example, you'd have the blasters for, usually those required batteries. But with Primal, though, you only need 2, and they attach to the top of the figure's head. Running now through the accessories that come included with the figure. The first thing we'll have a look at is probably the things that we generally look at first when it comes to these releases, is the fact that the figure includes a whole bunch of swappable hands. Noted right now is at the ends of his monkey forearms, the figure does come included with closed punching fists. If you'd rather, though, something that's going to be wielding his blades, for example, then these are the hands for the job. The hands themselves are nicely and decoratively detailed here in a very dark gunmetal silver. You may be able to see as well there's some scratching there on the surface, so it looks like this guy's been in battle. The figure also as well comes included with a pair of relaxed hands. I want to make sure I've got the hand-to-hand here. Figure comes with a pair of relaxed hands, as you can see. And he also comes with a pair of gestured hands. Generally, a lot of times when it comes to these displays, I always like to go with the gestured or dynamic hands. I just think it adds a little bit more pizzazz to displaying these. The hands, by the way, can be swapped out. I'm going to kind of get to that more in a moment. The figure also comes included with, I guess most of everything is kind of usually either be a swappable faceplate option or things that are going to be for specifically his cyber blades. So I guess probably the next best thing is look at the cyber blades. The cyber blades, if looking at them, seem to be identical. I don't think there's anything differently done between one or the other. They're using a translucent orange plastic. You can probably see by the way I'm waving my hand behind it, but they've painted all this nice decorative silver over top of it. Now, these can be wielded in a couple of different ways, a couple of clever ways. First of all, the obvious thing is that you can have him wielding them in his hands. So if I was to go back to those gripping hands that we looked at earlier, you simply just take the blades and you fit them very nicely in his hand. Yeah, they're not going to be going anywhere at all. If you're familiar, though, with Optimus Prime, one thing that's cool about the blades is that they can also be holstered on the sides of his arms. So let's kind of just pick the figure up right now. Like I said, there's going to be a fair bit to cover off here. If you look at his arms, the neat thing about his arms is that these shift upwards. So like his main forearm piece, first of all, slides up this way. But then he also, if I just move his hand out of the way, this part also shifts down. See that? I don't know if you guys can. If you drop it down like this, there's now an available slot. And hey, wouldn't you know it, I just happen to have a thing that can fit into that. We're just going to take that. We're going to now take the handle. So instead of actually fitting it into his hands, we're going to take those same handles and we're going to slide them into those holes. And we're just going to put in a little bit of pressure. And now Primal's got himself his blades. And you could do, of course, the same thing on the other side as well. So we'll just drop that down. You don't necessarily have to bring these up, but I like the idea that readying himself for battle, these also shift up there as well. So we're going to take then the other blade. We're going to slide that into the back here. And now he's got himself his blades, which is a nice way of displaying the figure. But wait, there's more. What you can also do, too, is that the blades do attach. So let's remove them on both sides here. There we go. And looking at the handles, there is also a connecting piece. I want to make sure I've got the right. There we go. You get this little connecting piece that basically is just a ringlet, and then there's slots on both sides, or pegs on both sides. If you look at the bottom of the blades where the ends of the handles are, you can see there's notably a slot there. You just take one end, plug it in place like that. Take the other end, slide it in there as well. Make sure it's all the way on there. And now you've got yourself a blade, or kind of like, I guess that would be his bladed, it's kind of like a bladed staff almost, and you can carry it around that way as well. But there's more. What you can do is you can also detach these. And I noticed though when I was attaching the handles that they're very tight, sometimes even very difficult to remove. There we go. Just detach those. The character also comes with something similar, now connecting it by a chain. One thing I like about the chain is you can see that there are a few linklets. Are these linklets? Links that have a little bit of rusting effect on them. They're not everywhere, but where they are, they count. It just adds a little bit of age and wear and tear to them. And these, by the way, are real metal chains. They're not plastic at all. So you take those same pegs that would be similar to the one that connected basically the two together, and now you attach them onto the ends of the handles. These ones actually attach a lot easier than the one that connects them both together. And you take these, plug them on both sides, and now Primal basically gets himself like a pair of bladed nunchuck almost. Really neat. Like that a lot. And there's one other way. Oh yes, there is. There's one other way of displaying these too. If you look at the back of the figure's body, he has these circular discs right here. Now this was one of the hardest things I had to remove on the figure. And in fact, I had to use myself a screwdriver to take them off. You kind of want to get in there with a screwdriver or something. You got to really be careful that you don't damage the plastic. But you just basically get underneath it and you go like this. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. You just sort of twist it back and forth. Not to the point where you're adding stress to it, but just enough that you can kind of get them dislodged. And you have to just kind of wiggle them back and forth. And then when you get them high enough up there, then usually you can hold on to it and just pull the whole piece out. I wish there was an easier way. I wish, if anything, that these, instead of being pegs, they could have maybe been magnetic. Magnetic would have just been the whole easier way of doing it. And then you get these clips. Now these clips are just straight gray plastic. And now those plug into those holes that are now exposed. And so we're just going to twist that in. And this was also something I noticed was a very tight fit. If you're having a struggle, by the way, getting these in place, you can always go the route of heating these up. Maybe even heating the hole, I feel, with like a hairdryer. Very difficult to get these in place. But once they're in place, again, you just kind of twist it back. There we go. Once you get it twisted in place, then you can take yourself the blades. And because the blades are a fairly narrow handle, they just clip in place like that. They sit a little on the looser side. I mean, the closer that you kind of get it to the guard of the hilt, the more secure it stays in place. If you have it a little bit further down, that's where it sits a little bit more looser. But just because, like, this is a much wider handle at the end of it. So again, you just snap those in place. You basically would just rinse and repeat the steps. The only thing about it, though, is obviously if you've removed now that little peg, where did I put mine? Once you've removed that peg, you just want to make sure you put it in a place where you're not going to lose it, because it definitely would be lost if you're not too careful. Now, aside from hands and blades, Primal also does come included with 3 swappable faceplates. One is currently being occupied by the figure's head, but we're going to go ahead and actually just remove the figure's head. The head would probably be the easiest way to show you guys. We're just going to detach it from the ball joint, and we're going to leave a decapitated Primal just there for right now. I want to show you, first of all, how the batteries have to be installed. It's a very easy thing, and one of the easiest battery changes that I have done with the DLX releases. It's literally just a case of taking the top panel off. And then you have to unscrew this section, take that plate off, and then you install then the 2 AG13 batteries. You don't have to worry about taking this off every single time, by the way, that you're going to turn on and off the eyes. Once everything is screwed in place, you just put this back in place, and just make sure you get it around the ears. And then this little button right here, you'll depress, and that'll turn on and off the eyes. A nice glowing green eye, 2 of them in fact, and all you have to do is just turn them on and off that way. Super simple and easy to do. While I do have, though, the Primal head in my hands, you guys can get a closer look at the details on the figure. Just fantastic work. I will be honest, the Rise of the Beast design of Optimus Primal wasn't as interesting to me on screen, just because there's, like, the character really has a lot of grays, a lot of variations of grays and silvers, unlike maybe like the original Beast Wars Optimus Primal that would have had some necessary blues, reds, and of course those silvers. Just brings a lot more colors to the table. I will say, though, like looking at this thing in hand, there's a lot of work you can see the talented team behind the scenes had to put into this figure. Not only with the faceplate, not only with the eyes, but just all around, just the paintwork to this as well. Now, of course, this is the way it attaches onto the figure. There's the socket underneath. But while I'm just going to turn the eyes off for right now. While I've got the head in my hands, there's two other faceplate options available. There's this one that gives us Optimus Prime sort of more in a primal look. As you can see, he's got some nostrils. He's got also as well a mouth. And that swaps out with the more exposed, or I guess more shielded face guard. And then this just swaps out for this one. The one that actually I do like, and I don't recall seeing it in the movie, is one that looks a little bit more akin to like the original Optimus Primal, where you've got the faceplate on the top and the bottom, and then you got a mouth dividing the two. Now, changing out the faceplates, I noticed was a harder thing to do. Not maybe as hard as removing those things on the back of his body, but it was just kind of difficult to figure out whereabouts I was supposed to pull the faceplate, because there's nothing really to hold on to. There's nothing necessarily telling you this is the part that you actually pull off. It was more just a guessing game than anything else. You just basically just pull. I found the easiest way to kind of pull it on, and you maybe can even see, like maybe there's a slot right there. Gives you at least an idea of whereabouts there we go, whereabouts that's supposed to pull. But you can see like that's where his chin ends, and then that's where the face piece goes. So like it's close in quarters. I wouldn't never recommend, using a screwdriver to pry that off. You kind of have to just kind of wiggle it back and forth, and then once that's removed, you can see it attaches by two pegs, and it plugs into this right here, and then there's a little slot section down here, so that plugs in place as well. So I'm going to just loosely add these because I want to make sure that they're easy enough to remove. So there's this one that would be one that we see in the movie, which is again okay. I just never really been a big fan of Optimus Prime with an exposed mouth. But there's this look, or the look that I prefer. Even though I don't think I've actually seen this in the movie where he has the mouth like this, I feel it's more a throwback to the original Optimus Prime from Beast Wars, or Optimus Primal. So what we'll do is, again, we're just line up the pegs. We'll just fit that in place and snap that in place. And now we've got like an Optimus Prime that looks a little bit more like his Beast Wars design. I want to make sure that's all the way on there. And again, like the lights work exactly the same. We're not tampering at all with the actual eyes. It's just really the mouth that we're changing. But you can see like how well the look works with three different faces. And really with three different faceplates, how the face varies as much as it does. We'll just turn that off. Let's pop that back onto the head, or pop it back onto the neck. So there's a ball joint right there. There's a socket right there. We'll meet the two in the middle, and we'll just plug that in place. I did notice, though, getting this guy the packaging, that I felt like his head was too low. And in actual fact, when you look at the head does shift on what essentially is a post. So there's a post and there's a ball joint. There's a ball joint and, again, meeting in the middle. So I think when I came out of the packaging, the head was a little bit more lower, but you can adjust it upward if you want a little bit more of a regal stance for him. For the details on the figure, he looks fantastic. Again, I feel like he's robbed a little bit of the color, that he maybe doesn't have those primal colors that I would recognize. A lot of the blues, a lot of the reds are missing. More in favor of like silvers and grays, but the silvers and grays work really well for this figure. Something I do like to do, though, with this Prime is that you can bring his shoulders up. Something somewhat similar to the original Optimus Primal design from Beast Wars. Just bring those shoulders up a little bit. I just feel it kind of gives him a little bit more something to look at, as opposed to being fit so close to his body. Now, because he is like techno-organic, you can see that there's some fur design that they've sculpted so nicely here on his shoulders. They've also got here on his forearms as well. The majority of his body, though, is, as you can see, very much more, again, like robotic. There are a few little cool panels that flip out and move on this guy. One of the biggest ones being, I guess, the fact that on the back of his body, these do shift around. Now, you want to be careful, really, by the way that these attach. These attach by a ball joint on the back here. I've had this come off a couple of times, and this one was a harder one to put back in place, but there's some adjustability there as well. Some really cool circuitry, pistons, and everything that keeps this robot going. Of course, you got, again, the incorporation of the fur there on the back of his body. We've already looked at the fact that this is the part, of course, where the adjustable neck plugs in place. Again, I like the fact that that's concealed. But all in all, like, it's a really interesting design for Optimus Primal. The only thing that does really have some wear and tear is his feet. I mean, that's the only little bit of brown that we actually get on the figure. Most of it is really just scratchings of silver. Again, you got some wear and tear to the body as a whole. It's just a really neat design. And of course, we can't overlook the fact he's got the maximal symbol there front and center on his chest. Now, for the figure's articulation, this is going to be a whole lot to cover here, so I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So we already looked at the fact that the head is going to be on a ball joint, and it moves back and forth, and it moves fairly freely. Even though he does have a collar piece on the back of his head, it doesn't seem to at all limit what you can do with the head. Now, the head does also shift. If you look at the neck is actually a separate piece. I just assumed initially that the neck was all molded as one piece for the top of his collar, but it seems like it's a separate piece. So the neck also shifts back and forth. Granted, it doesn't shift much forward and back, but it does do a little bit of movement there as well. The head does rotate back and forth. The head does also turn back and forth, even though he's got the collar in the way. The only thing I would say, and this is something I did commend them for doing earlier, as easy it is to remove the cover to get access to the battery, it doesn't snap in a place where when you are rotating the head, you find frequently you kind of put pressure down on the head, and then you kind of feel as you're lifting and removing your finger out of the way that the cover comes off also quite easily as well. I wish there was a way that this could have snapped in place, but on the other end of the argument too, if it snapped in place, it would be a whole lot harder to worry about. And then if there was like slots or pegs on either side, those small pegs could be potentially broken. So you have to kind of take the good with the bad. For his upper torso, now Prime's going to have like a crunch. And I'm just going to see if I can bring it as far forward as I can get it. I mean, there's a good amount of motion here happening with Prime. Upper torso is, first of all, granted, going to be on a ball joint, so you can rotate that back and forth. When you are rotating it, though, you want to kind of make sure that the skirting, so this actually does shift forward. And when you're doing it, you want to just kind of make sure that that's out of the way, because when you're rotating the torso, it may, though, have a process, and it does happen a couple of times, where it clips that. And it doesn't necessarily pop this off, but when you're rotating his torso, you can feel like all of a sudden it hits something, and then you're like, what did I hit? What did I hit? And then you look on the back and realize it just hit the back of this monkey's skirt. So you want to make sure that that's just out of the way. But yeah, it does rotate forward and back quite freely. It does rock this way also as well, and we've already looked at the fact there's a nice forward crunch there as well. We could look at also the fact that this does service a part of his poseability point. The shoulders are on hinges, and there's a ball joint that attaches that to the inside cavity of the shoulder, and it moves back and forth, so there's a little bit of poseability there. These shoulders move forward and back. They also move, of course, up and down as well. He has a swivel there, what would be at the top of his shoulder blade. I guess that his shoulder blade would be over here. His shoulder would rotate here. When you're rotating it, though, you want to just make sure that the shoulder is out of the way, because there's this little lip. Let me just show you guys. There's this little part that sticks up like this. And when it does rotate, if it rotates with the shoulder down, you can kind of feel it hit something. So you just want to make sure it is brought up a little bit. Rotates forward and back. And then he's got a hinge in his elbow that hinges in two places. And it's sort of this automorphing thing that happens. If you look at the back of his body, when you rotate it, it rotates and then it stops all of a sudden, and then it continues its way on the form, but it also shifts this shoulder pad piece, or the elbow pad piece. It shifts that forward as well. See that? Of course, this does also shift, so I want to make sure I just bring this back around here. So this slides up as well, so we can count that as a poseability point. And this also drops down as well to hide, of course, the place that's going to store the blade. All right, looking at the lower half of his body, these panels actually do shift. They shift only back and forth just a little bit, but also when you bring the legs out, these panels, I don't know if you guys can see, the panels also shift down. There's just a little bit, kind of a way just to kind of guide and make sure that they're not in the way when you are moving the figure around. These back panels stay in place, so you want to make sure that those don't get clipped. The legs, actually, there's a swivel there at the top of the thigh. I want to make sure, again, I'm not missing out on anything. Swivel at the top of the thigh. There's a double hinge, a very continuous hinge there that starts at the top, continues its way down here, and again, you can see so much work gets put into this figure. Double hinge there, and then when we get to the leg, or more so the feet, the foot moves back and forth this way. It moves up and down. There's toe articulation, and there also seems to be some heel articulation as well on the back, right? Maybe there isn't. I thought there was maybe some on the back there as well, but still like a full ankle tilt and ankle rock back and forth this way, and again, you've got your toe articulation. So like this guy has the articulation where it counts. It does have, I think, even advertised, it has the most levels of articulation that we've gotten ourselves from a DLX release. And again, like one last time, just bringing back in Optimus Prime. I just had this guy off to the side here. My Optimus Prime still love this figure. I probably should have brought in, the Rise of the Beast Optimus Prime, but at least it gives you guys an idea of size-wise. And yeah, the buttons still work. The batteries still work on this guy. Let's turn on Optimus Prime so you guys can see the difference. I feel like he should have been a little bit shorter, but again, like to go back and watch the movie again, I think they're scaled pretty good to one another, because I know like the Rise of the Beast Optimus Prime is this size. They've just done a little bit of different reworking in the torso, and they've incorporated a lot more of the dark gunmetal gray. But this is of a somewhat similar size, if not the exact size of Optimus Prime. We've already looked at the Rise of the Beast Optimus, if you guys want to check out that review. But yeah, like Optimus Primal. While again, like, honestly, if I, to be all honest with you guys, I didn't like the design of most of the Rise of the Beast, because they were just, again, like very dark. Everything was all kind of monochromatic, dark gray, dark silver. It's just a whole lot with very lacking of colors. Yet, though, seeing this thing physically in hand and what really, again, the talented team behind the scenes at Threezero have been able to do on all their DLX releases. Keeping in mind, again, like these guys are die-cast. Die-cast body, at least for the frame, and then, of course, they add the plastic panels over top of it. Primal does have a lot of cool accessories working for him. Of course, the biggest one being the fact he does come included with his blades. I like also to the fact that there's ways to display the blades, not always just in the case of having them hold in his hands. You can, of course, attach them onto the sides of his forearms. You can attach them onto the back of his body. And then even that, you can also attach them together to either have a bladed staff weapon, or hey, why not? You can also attach chains to have like a nunchuck weapon as well. I like the look of Primal. I really am happy with how this one turned out. I have to say, I end up liking this one more physically in hand than I did like him on the silver screen. Opting here for Optimus Primal to display the figure in final looks with the blades attached by chain. One of the ways of displaying the blades. Not only that, you can have him holding in his hand like I have right now. You can have him jetting out from the forearms. That's pretty cool. You can attach them together. You can attach them by chains. Or, if you want to have them conveniently stored away. Unfortunately, one of the hardest things, though, to change on the figure was popping out those pegs on the back of his body and attaching those clamp pieces to store the blades that way. Luckily, though, less stress was involved to change the batteries on the top of the figure's head. In fact, the head is one thing that comes off way too easily, and it was just a case of once that plate is off, you just have to unscrew the battery cover and then install your two AG13 batteries. Usually is always the case when it comes to DLX releases from Threezero. Batteries are not sadly included, but the batteries are fairly easy to pick up. I mean, you could pick up like 2 trays of them from Amazon for probably like $10 to $12 at most. You may also notice here as we're wrapping up the review on the rotisserie, I've got the character currently displayed with one of the other faceplates that we didn't start the review with. Maybe not one that's as closely resembling as the way he looks in the Rise of the Beast, but the way I like to display this figure is a little bit more closer to resembling the way he looks in Transformers Beast Wars. I've also got the shoulders swung up there too. One of the ways of course, making him look a little bit more closer to the original CG series. I just love this figure. Maybe again, like he's lacking some of the color. Not that I would consider that Threezero would entertain this idea, but to take this mold, which is already good right away, and if they were to release this, say, in Beast Wars, quote, color schemes, we're bringing in, again, some of the blues, some of the reds, where, again, like, maybe not most movie accurate, it certainly would probably be enticing to collectors that maybe didn't like, again, like the fact that pretty much all the Beast Wars were very dark, grimy, very dark, like, metallic colors. Primal was a lot of grays. Primal was a lot of gunmetal grays, probably a lot of silvers. I think just by releasing this guy, again, throwing out an idea to Threezero, if they released this guy in a Beast War color scheme, I would be curious to know how many people would be interested to pick this figure up. Even without the lacking of those colors, from head to toe, it's an interesting looking bot, super posable, and hopefully I was able to cover off the details and the posability on this figure through the course of this very long review. As stated already, this guy is slated to ship the third quarter of 2024. Sadly, though, he has sold out over on Threezero's site, or at least the pre-order has sold out, and it was going for $249.99 US dollars, or about $250, of course, with all the shipping on top of that as well. If you guys are still interested and would like to get your hands on this one, you probably could check around to other various online sites that do sell and stock Threezero releases, and get your hands on Primal that way. Big thank you once again to the folks over at Threezero that did provide this sample of the brand new Transformers Rise of the Beast Optimus Primal, a fantastic release. Looking forward to having this guy displayed with the earlier looked at Rise of the Beast Optimus Prime. If you guys did enjoy this video, do it a solid, throw it a like. If you guys want to stick around for more though, hit the subscribe, turn on the bell, come back please. As always guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.